Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.
The Grid. A digital frontier. I tried to picture clusters of information as they moved through the computer. What did they look like? Ships? Motorcycles? Were the circuits like freeways? I kept dreaming of a world I thought I'd never see. And then, one day...
You got in.
That's right, man. I got in.
So, we're here to discuss whether or not we are living in a simulation. Let me give you the little background on my history of this theory, because it runs in my veins deep. Whether the God programmer put them there for me to discuss in his simulation or not, I don't know. But so way back in the day, this must have been probably even in grade school, I was watching I think a PBS Nova episode, and they were talking through how video games were, it was like the history of video games almost. And so they're walking you through like Nintendo in the 80s and like N64 in the modern era, and I think PlayStation 2 was like just coming out or something like that. And they were diving into the history of graphics and all of this, and something really stood out to me at the very end. And the dude who like presented the whole thing was like walking down the street, and he's like, one day computers will be so powerful enough that this will look exactly like a video game, and you will be indistinguishable from the real world. And you, right now, wouldn't even know whether this is real or fake. And he said that in the future, there will be so many simulations of the real world that chances are this is a simulation right here and now. Because think of the thousands and thousands and millions upon billions of simulations that may occur in the future. You think of people playing The Sims right now. How many people play The Sims? How many houses do they have of those Sims? You know, millions. They're out there in the world, right? And he was saying that there's only one reality, but there are billions upon billions of simulations that will occur in the future. So what are the odds of this being the real world versus one of those billions of simulations? So chances are we're all in a simulation right now.
A few years from now, you might have a game room in your home, which doesn't mean games in the room. It means the room itself is a game. You'll walk in and say, PlayStation 12, give me Myst 10. Instantly, the room becomes a dense forest full of adventures you experience in every possible way. Or, let's see. Pirate's Revenge. You're at sea, swashing and buckling in a game based on a movie that hasn't even come out yet. You'll be in the movie before there is a movie. Xbox 5, let's play Grand Theft Auto 9. Or you're on a city street, being stalked by a thug who's trying to bash your brains in. Only he's actually a thug avatar. The real human being trying to bash in my brains and move on to the next level of the game is a 10-year-old girl named Misty, who's playing against me from somewhere else in the world. She's carefully chosen to look like that.
And that really stuck with me. Again, this was like around the year 2000 or something. And so I even developed my own theory around this. And it's just a theory. I don't know if I ever told you this or not, but this is my alien theory. Did I ever mention this to you?
I don't know. Did you?
Okay, so early high school, I came up with a theory. Again, it's just a theory. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying it's a theory that this isn't the year at the time, 2003 or whatever. This is the year like 2003, let's say. And humanity is long dead. Sure. Aliens have found Earth.
Yes.
They found or uncovered, what life was like back then. They somehow found my DNA, and they recreated me and created this huge simulation or simulated world that's all 3D projected out on a blank planet like Mars. Let's say you take Mars and you use alien technology to recreate the 21st century. Mm-hmm. And everything around me is fake, but it's real to me because I don't know any better, and I'm either a simulation of a dead, Bill back in the day, or I'm like Jurassic Park recreated through DNA, splicing or whatever. And so when I interact with other people, those aren't real people, but they're aliens who are here to study me and what life was like in the 21st century. So that's my alien theory that is somewhat based on the simulation thing that I came up with high school.
So like a Truman Show.
Yeah, kind of like the Truman Show. Actually, that's another thing because I came up with all this stuff before I saw the Truman Show, and then I saw the Truman Show. I'm like, wait a minute, I kind of came up with this idea. They're basing this off of my alien theory, kind of. But yeah, Truman Show I think is an excellent explanation for what this all might be.
So I think one of the things that maybe gets me, what I want to do is I want to kind of go meta a bit on this idea and just kind of comment on how I now see this almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I see the Michael Kakakaku guy or whatever talking about this, and
yeah. Like it's really picked up. Like around 2 or 3 years ago, like it really became mainstream that we all might be living in a simulation. Like if you go back 10 years, nobody heard anything about this.
Yeah. But and people, I think I've heard things like this guy named Bertrand Russell is like a big proponent of this, and he's been around for, I don't know, a couple while. But the thing that I always notice about these types of people who propound around this, they've generally got most of their needs met and have like an ability to kind of, I think there aren't a lot of Ugandan child soldiers hypothesizing whether or not this is all a simulation. Because this is kind of my problem, is that I have this and we'll go into, like, you mentioned The Sims, and I want to go into like the pop culture kind of like her examples of this, and I think like those are like The Sims and like The Matrix and stuff like that. But I think that one, it assumes the one of the core premises of this thing is that anybody would be interested in us enough to simulate us. If someone out there is in the future interested enough in simulating what life is like in the 21st century, then yes, they might be doing it. And yes, there's probably, if you divide and multiply all the infinities up, maybe there's a greater than 50-50 chance that we're in a simulation or whatever. Okay. But it kind of strikes me as like a thing that I think everybody kind of goes through, maybe, where like, I think the Truman Show phenomenon is super common because we kind of maybe have like a really individualistic outlook maybe on life. People, maybe this is just too much of a generalization, but I think in general that like, we have a society and culture that like kind of promotes an individual self-worth and individual value and all these things. It's like if you walk in, you have a stain on your dress when you walk into work or whatever. The stain in your mind is huge, and it's like visible from space. And it's and meanwhile, everybody else is like in their own little world, and will never in a million years notice the stain in your dress, right? So I think that the Truman Show is kind of a hyper example of that. Like your life, your day-to-day, let's be honest, very mundane, very incredibly ordinary life is somehow the subject of captivation for millions and millions, like football stadiums worth of people. And what I don't get is how you square that circle. Like how,
well, I think
what I'm saying is like, so yes, let's suppose that aliens in the future are running the Bill high school experiment number 700. Like they're doing that, and they are monitoring you, and they are doing that stuff. Well, yeah, then that means that you're just as important or unimportant as Bill 762, who is running in the server rack right next to you.
Uh-huh.
And so then we get into, well, this is effectively a multiverse and all the problems that, go, do you really even die? And yeah, I mean, that's another subject we could get into too. That, is there, if you really do believe there is if they're simulating this universe, well, then you probably believe that they're simulating lots and lots of other, universes that are similar to this one.
Yep.
You have a functional multiverse, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what it boils down to is a couple things there. Is this your simulation and you set this up, in the year 3000 something so that you can live in the 21st century and not really know it, like you program it in so you're not aware of your setup? Or are you just a pawn in like somebody else's simulation that they're really interested in viewing or seeing?
I think the second one is probably more likely.
Well, yes and no, because until I could have set it up that I'm going to win the lottery, when I reach 30 or something like that. And then it really gets interesting because I become like the next Elon Musk or something of the world and really, do things. Where this is just the how do I say it, the lay period before the big event, if you will. And you could also make the argument that this whole simulation started yesterday and there was no mundane past, but you just programmed it into your brain to think that you lived for 20 some odd years, and this all could have started an hour ago for all I know.
Yeah. So I feel a lot of, coming from a sort of religious background, I feel like all of these scientific people, like Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson, famously, says what use is philosophy? Despite the fact that he is, as a scientist, you are a studier of the philosophy of empiricism. You're not a separate little thing. You're in under the subset of philosophy if you are a scientist. That's how I look at it. One of the things that maybe does point to evidence of, something, that yes, maybe it is like simulations, that you do have these things that you can't really explain cosmologically, maybe like dark energy and the Big Bang. But to me, what I find about the simulation hypothesis is kind of weirds me out. It kind of disturbs me. Because I feel like almost in some way it's a rationalization. It's like, I don't have to feel maybe bad for all these people I'm fucking over because, hey,
they're
maybe
not
we live
real.
in a simulation.
Yeah.
I can maybe screw over my workers a little bit more because, hey, we live in a simulation.
Well, that's, I mean, it's hard to prove it is. So, me personally, I don't think I could ever believe it without some sort of phenomenal proof. And since that's the case, I'm not gonna go shoot up the workplace because I think I'm living in Grand Theft Auto,
Yeah.
But, I mean, I have another theory out there that I always thought would be interesting because it's a way to simulate the world now in a way. So, if again, this is a big if because it's probably not possible, but if there was a way to take a snapshot, like a picture of every molecule, let's say on Earth.
Yes.
Wherever it is, you can theoretically then, put that into a computer and based on the velocity and direction and blah, blah, blah of every single molecule, yes, protons and neutrons pop in and out of existence, but if there was a way to map all that too, you can rewind history and actually see the past in the computer simulation, right?
Right now, Bill, you really do sound like someone who stopped doing physics before 1902. It's like that in scientific history. I would love I would love to maybe, take classes or teach classes on scientific history. That'd be a really cool idea. But this is the era that you're talking about, is we have everything measured out to 6 decimal places, and all that remains of science to do is to get the 7th. Like there was that idea turn of the century, pre-quantum mechanics, but there were things like the ultraviolet catastrophe and all these really important scientific events that came, and were still really unresolved. But
Right.
generally, I feel as if the attitude at the time was that, yes, if we just knew the position velocity of every particle in existence, we could run it all back and forward, and it could be a clockwork universe. I think Thomas Jefferson, kind of had this mindset that, you could conceivably, basically, the God winded up the clock and then let it run, and without any intervention, beforehand. And now that I've just mentioned God and brought this all in, I think that when we're talking about simulations, what we're really talking about is God. I've noticed so much in common with discussion about is this a simulation, or is there a God? I think are almost
The two options.
Well, no, I mean, I think they're two different phrases of the same question, right? Because obviously, anything that's capable of creating the universe, de facto, we assign that power to God. So later, if we find out that it is aliens in the server rack, I mean, who cares? They can delete or upload entire solar systems. They're God.
Right. Well, I think what is your definition of God? Because under that definition, it sounds like it's anybody who has the power to create or destroy life. And
Yes.
if it's aliens with a server rack running this as a simulation, technically they're God.
Yes.
I
in every functional respect, you couldn't differentiate them from an
Yes.
actual God. If they didn't want to be known as the aliens, and they wanted to be known as Yahweh, okay, there was
Right.
nothing you could do to
distinguish that. Yeah.
when you talk about the nature of okay, well, can we tell if the universe was created last Tuesday? And I think this kind of dovetails into things like epistemology, right? Where that's the study of how do we know that we know things, and I think that is something that is perfectly applicable here to the simulation hypothesis, because at the end of the day, and maybe you can kind of hear the frustration in my voice, because it's at the end of the day, it really does kind of work out to be the same thing as God, and in that you can't really prove or disprove it, at least not to my satisfaction.
Yeah. No. I mean, I don't think you could ever, with living in the 21st century, prove one way or another. I mean, you can't prove a negative, and I mean, you can only prove a positive. So, are we in a simulation? You have to have some kind of proof that we are in order to prove it. Until then, it's just a theory.
Yes.
And I don't think
Go
ahead.
When you were beginning this thing, I got my hankles up, because you were talking about this is like a theory, and I guess it's like a theory, but okay, so, and I know this is just so overused, and this is something that I can nitpicky on, right? But right, there's a difference between hypothesis, theory, and law, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a theory is a scientific concept that has been exposed to every conceivable test that can be run, and then passed them. So I feel like theory is just not, at least that's my own personal definition of the word. I don't know if you
So I always thought a theory was something that has yet to be proven one way or another. And since you can't prove a negative, I'm going to say there's life on Pluto. Prove it. Prove it. Prove me wrong. Until that happens, it's a theory.
That's something that I remember too. The difficulty of proving a positive versus proving a negative, right?
Right.
Like,
because you said you have to run through every conceivable test in order to solve it. Well, good luck trying to run every test to prove there's no life on Mars, because you looked under every single rock? Probably not.
Yes, it's prove that there is gold in Alaska. Prove that there is no gold in Alaska.
Exactly.
One of them requires a shovel. The other requires like geoengineering and space elevator.
Right. So, if it's not a theory by your definition, what would something be that hasn't been proven yet?
I think that it's a hypothesis, and it's
a hypothesis.
It belongs to a special class of hypothesi, right? That are going to be permanent hypotheses.
Uh-huh.
I think simulation, like believing that you live in an ancestor simulation, like Neil deGrasse Tyson says. I think that fundamentally he might think that there's a lot of difference between that and intelligent design, and I don't think so.
No, there's really not. I mean, actually, I wouldn't say there's any difference between an intelligent design. Like, if we're all living in some dude's experiment in a petri dish,
and that's something that, like, the Christian right, when they're promoting this intelligent design, they're never like, or it may be God, or it might be super intelligent aliens in a Dyson sphere,
Yeah. I mean, like, if this is an experiment, like, this is a simulation by every definition.
Right, and it's like,
because we're just a big experiment.
But the question, I guess, is kind of goes back to, why does God allow suffering? And since we're basically in that territory where we can swap out God and put in space alien, Grabzor running the server rack, right? So if why does Grabzor allow suffering? Why does Grabzor allow the Ugandan child soldier, to get malaria or whatever? I mean, one of the things about God is that he's outside of the physical universe, and he's not really bound by its laws, but maybe Grabzor is, right? And he's in something that looks like our universe, where electrons weigh the same and all that jazz, right? But oh my God, is he not, like, maybe even incredibly more immoral and awful? And you're generating these suffering machines to make drones and Sims suffer. Most people don't lead happy, fulfilling lives. Most people lead awful, nasty, brutish, short lives.
Why do you, when you play The Sims, block off all the doors and light up the fire and kill the guy? It's the same kind of thing. Actually, while we were doing this, I was able to dig up an old PowerPoint I put together where I captured my alien theory.
Nice.
And in it, I'll just read one little piece of it because I thought this was a very interesting piece, where it says, and I quote, "The aliens want to study human behavior in the life 2003 as we know it." So that's when I put this together. "The real Earth 2003 could be a different stage than what we know it as. For example, in this 2003 we have high-speed internet connections. On the real Earth in 2003, they might not have developed this until 2008 or so. Also," and this is the part I was going to bring up, "events such as 9/11 may never even have happened, and they just made it up to study human reaction to such events."
That's right. That's the best 9/11 truth or conspiracy that I've heard from an 8th grader in 2003.
Right, but I mean, I
was really hoping you were gonna read something like, "And the coalition of the willing wouldn't be in Iraq liberating Iraq right now."
No, I mean that's where that piece ends. But it's like, I mean that you think about that, because it's like, what if there was no 9/11, and that's actually what happened in real life, and if this was a simulation of the year 3000, and some, punk kid wanted to go back and ram a couple planes into a building and see what happens, how does humanity react to that? Because we're still living in the fallout of what happened during 9/11. If there's no 9/11, the world would be a completely different place today. And, again, I put this together in 2003, so this was like 2 years after that. And my life being born in 87, I was just young enough. We're going to be the youngest people, our generation, to remember 9/11.
Yes.
And, not to delve on this too much here, but that whole aspect of if this is a simulation or not, this could very well be a simulation to study what life was like post 9/11, if it was made up or not, because it really just put a big curve in the course we were on as a human race.
I think that's definitely jet fuel. Can't delete steel beams.
Right. Well, I don't want to dive into that too much, but you see my point here. It's like we could.
What I don't understand is like all these people who like have conspiracies about 9/11. Why can't that be one? Right? Like, why can't we're all living in a simulation? Like, why don't I hear Alex Jones, talking about, well, of course, we're all living in a Dyson sphere, and
right. Well, it's the same kind of thing. Like in the future, if you create a simulation, you go back to World War II and shoot Hitler before it even happens. What would life evolve, like after that? It's the same kind of thing.
If I'm doing this and I believe that the Sims are intelligent, like that is a much different thing than just throwing my Ken and Barbie dolls in the shredder, or whatever, right? Like.
Well, that goes back to the whole idea: is this a simulation? Because if it is, we're all just computer generated anyway. So what difference does it make if somebody gets shot in the head?
That's the thing that I think is the power of this rationalization.
Right.
Is it like, well, if it's all a simulation, then maybe abandoning my wife and 5 kids to go party in Malibu, that doesn't matter because they're all the simulations anyway.
But now you're diving into a question of what is being alive, because if it is a simulation and you take these obscure risks that you have a high chance of dying in the traditional sense of the word, if it's a simulation, you're dead. You're not experiencing anything. But while you're currently self-aware, would you not want to continue on whether this is a simulation or not? So the whole argument of who cares if it's proven that this is a simulation, let's do whatever we want kind of thing, I don't think it holds up, because we're still, like I said, we're still all self-aware. If we learn tomorrow that this is all simulation, nothing changes. Like, I'm still going to live my life the way I've always been living, whether or not it's a simulation or not, because it could still come back that when I die in the simulation, my file's deleted. I'm not coming back. So while I'm alive, quote unquote, I should keep being alive. Unless you're saying that, we have infinite lives and you just reset the game.
Yeah, but like if you reset the game, and I mean now we're talking about reincarnation, right? Like you don't
right.
transfer your memories from one, copy to another.
Exactly.
So this is one of my problems, like maybe with, and I realize now that like all the kind of anti-arguments I have about God apply here to the simulation as well. But because the thing is, Bill, is that I don't think we do. I don't think we do live in a simulation. I don't think that's possible to prove it one way or another, but I doubt it. Here's why. And I understand like it's better to, maybe that we do live in a simulation, that, you, instead of just passing into worm food, there is some Bill out there that is able to experience and do things. Maybe you just, like you wake up and this was all just a game at like Dave and Buster's or something.
Right, that you set up. Under that scenario, you would be the simulator.
Yes. So here's my problem with this idea. Fundamentally, and this is my same problem with say God creating the universe too, is that if and this applies to, I think, more so to God than it does to maybe the simulation hypothesis, because what if we're just pawn scum and they're really studying the vast hyper empire on Arcturus 3, right? What if we're actually not even really the main show? In the case of like Christianity and God, yes, we are the main show,
Right.
We are the reason the universe is created. And what I say to that is, well, you don't need about 99.9% of it. You need the sun, you need the earth, you need the moon to generate tides, and then everything else on that is gravy. I mean, you've got planets, take or leave those. You could delete Jupiter tomorrow. It's not going to affect humanity one freaking bit.
Right, and you're
You don't-
saying
you
why
don't
why
need-
is the rest of the universe
You
here?
don't need a galaxy, let alone millions, trillions of galaxies.
Well,
You never even needed a solar system, never mind a galaxy, never mind a universe.
Here's my theory on all that, and this is another one of those things that came out of my crazy like early high school years, was that when you die, you are given, you when you die, if you do the traditional. If the argument holds that you go to heaven when you die, heaven, whether it be you wake up out of your simulation tube or whatever you were in, or actual heaven, you die in the real world, which is this world, and then you are given a whole nother Earth or solar system to be your own, so that you can then be God in this little simulation or another solar system somewhere.
On Kolob, you can rule too.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
So yeah, that was my explanation of why the universe was expanding, because you always hear, oh, the universe is expanding. Like, then why are all these new galaxies being popped into existence and this and that? And like, probably because you were given a simulation or something whenever you die, and you can rule however you want. And then when your subjects die, they get their own simulations or their own Earth or whatever, and you can just you then become the god of the next thing.
So, DJ, wind that back. Did you just say that the universe is expanding and new galaxies are being created?
I know that's not true, but in my 12-year-old self kept hearing how the universe was expanding. And in my understanding of it, universe expanding meant more of it was being made.
Mm-hmm. Well, I gotta say, 12-year-old Bill was right there with the preeminent minds of the 1950s.
Yeah.
People were throwing out models of the universe that just say, well, if 1 cubic centimeter of the space can produce a gram of hydrogen every million years just from nothing, we could balance everything out, that's how they kind of explained, how the cosmological that's how they explained an unchanging and static universe, something that wasn't driven by the Big Bang or expansion. But so here's something that I learned the other day, though, that's going to blow your mind. And I did not realize this, for a while. But have you heard of dark energy?
I have.
Okay, so dark energy is this force that is causing the expansion of the universe to speed up.
The speed up effect. Yeah.
Right, and it's where they're getting created from or where they're coming from. Nobody has any idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it does look like the creation of energy from nothing. That's what it looks like in terms of dark energy, in terms of. But this thing is dark energy is more of a failure for us to understand basic things about what space is and what energy is, because obviously there's something happening that involves both of those things on a cosmic level that we just are not clued into, Why I bring this up, the simulation thing is that maybe that is evidence.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That sure sounds like evidence of not real life, because if whatever you call reality seems to follow pretty standard mathematical explanations to the world, right?
and you see something that violates that.
And when you see something flat out violate the laws of physics, like, what would be causing that? Or how could that even be possible if you're not using cheat codes somewhere to, get around that?
Right. But the counter argument to that is us looking at dark energy and dark matter like a Jerusalem sheep herder looking at rain? You know, like, is that circa 5000 BC? You know, like, is that what we're talking about here? Because is this something that we can explain and we just don't understand, or is this just something that like has no explanation? We're never going to be able to test it, you know, because we can't even think about how to get dark matter or dark energy in a box.
Right, you can't contain it.
Yeah, if you can't get it
if you can't contain it, if it's completely invisible, how can you study it?
Right, how do you study it? If you can't take a chunk of it and drag it into a lab, modern science just can't really deal with it.
Nope.
It's fascinating stuff. So, do you think at the end of this conversation we're any closer to discovering if we live in a simulation or not?
No, because I go back to thinking there is absolutely no way you can tell, and I think it has an equal chance of being one way or another, and there's no way to tell.
So what is the use then of speculating? I think that maybe this is all a bit of a, especially for like these rich playboy types like Musk. Like, why are you're so grounded, in terms of what you think about reality. Like, why would you engage in this? It's kind of like mental masturbation. It's not,
Well, I think it's interesting to think about. Like, it's almost a form of entertainment. Like, what if this were true? What would that imply?
When I first played The Sims for the first time, it freaked me out because I would like go get something in the fridge and like, is this because my hunger meter is hot? Like I would have these moments of self-doubt where I wondered, am I really sentient? Then I realized there's no way that I could ever tell, and then I just kind of went, huh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
and what I think that so fascinating is that almost like just so much hay is being made out of this, and this has become such a popular topic. I'm just like, wow, this is really just, I never thought would be, become like a mainstream popular opinion / I'm kind of worried someone's going to start a religion around it. Yeah.
I mean, I could see it. I could definitely see it happen, and it's definitely come a lot. It's really picked up in the last couple of years, I would say, and it's become a lot more mainstream. Especially, like, a lot of people are saying, oh, Donald Trump's election proves that this is a simulation because there's no way in the world that he would ever be elected in the real world. And you also see like the Cubs winning the World Series, which is again they're saying that would never happen in the real world.
I really do believe that you live in a simulation. It's like all of the data you've collected and synthesized in your life and you view as the real world is also a fake world.
Yes.
So, like, how can Donald Trump be any more fake than that? Like,
exactly. But I mean, like, I told you my theory that this is all Donald Trump's simulation, and we're just all living in his world because
that's the only thing that makes sense is that it is Donald Trump's simulation.
Right.
I mean,
because it's like if you were gonna create your own simulation for yourself, you're gonna be born rich, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna be extremely popular, you're gonna do all these things that Donald Trump did, and then become president.
Donald Trump got transported to like the alien amusement park and sat down in front of the President of the United States machine at Dave & Buster's, at Galactic Dave & Buster's. And we're all now just living the 8 years.
Well, that's the thing. If this was a simulation, this could all happen in a fraction of a second. Our entire lives could be a fraction of a second.
Yep. So that's one theory that I subscribe to, is that if we do live in a simulation, it is run by Donald Trump, and God help us. God help us.
Yep.
I mean,
that's what I said. He could be a 5-year-old running the simulation, like The Sims. If a 5-year-old played The Sims, he would run through the family's life.
Mm-hmm.
We're just happen to be reaching the tail end of Donald Trump's life, but It's still the 5-year-old behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Yeah, that's right. That does make sense. That's why he's never like mentally grown past the age of like 13 or like
Yeah,
11.
because it's like a 10-year-old.
Because he is just an 11-year-old sitting in a brain cap somewhere
Yeah.
playing the game, and we're all just NPCs. So Donald Trump runs the Matrix.
This has been a presentation of Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.